Good afternoon. It is Therapy Thursday. Good afternoon. How are you? How are you? How are you? This is a very important one tonight. Come on in. When you come in, share the live. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Therapy Thursday, and it is time for another healing conversation on the Transforming Trauma podcast with Dr. Triffy. I use psychology and trending topics to teach how to transform trauma into passion, into purpose, into power, sometimes profit. I'm a licensed psychologist in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm also a clinical hypnotherapist. I like to say I teach people how to think better so they can feel better and do better. I want you to listen all the way through to the end, because this one is important and potentially life changing, transformative. Okay. Again, like and share. This is what we do these days. We like, we comment. Hi, Facebook user. I'm not sure why it's showing me you as Facebook user. You might have to do the little thingy that StreamYard says to do, so so I can see your name, or you can just tell me who you are. So like and share. I'm also simultaneously live on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on my page, Dr. Triffy page, and also in the Transforming Trauma Transformers tribe. We have a special group of smart women, sassy, success-oriented women who are interested in keeping their minds sharp, who join together in Trauma Transformers tribe. So if you haven't joined us yet, join us. Hi, Fiona, it's you. How are you, Fiona? That was a lovely prayer. I read that prayer that you posted, Fiona. Hi, Samuel. Welcome. Come on in. As you come in, just share the live. Today's episode, we're talking about pedophilia. It depends on where you are on the planet, as far as whether you say pedo or pedo. It's all the same. And I titled tonight's session, is it a crime or a mental disorder? Absolutely, Samuel. Men can listen to. I really want men to listen to. Okay? So I know this is a heavy subject. I know it's very loaded. I know it's very triggering for many people. I know it's hard to discuss. A lot of us think it's taboo. It's a very big topic, lots of different pieces and moving parts. There's no way we can cover everything there is to cover tonight. I think it's better discussed with non-emotionality. It's better discussed that way, but you can understand the high emotions. So I'm going to try my best to do it in as non-emotional a way as I can. Okay? If you feel triggered by the information that we talk about, when we say triggered, we mean your feelings, something might remind you of an experience, of a traumatic event, and your emotions become so strong that they might feel overwhelming for you. I want you to get help. There's always help available, okay? If you're in the US, the quickest way to go find help from a therapist is to go to Psychology Today. Okay, there's also therapy for Black girls. There's a guide and a directory. Just Google therapist. You'll get help, okay? Yes, Fiona says, as a therapist, this is one of her biases. It is so hard for her. It's very hard. This is a hard topic, even for healers, okay? And therapists. So, buckle up. My intention is not to justify or ignore or invalidate or explain it away. That's not my intention at all. My intention is to discuss the issue from a solutions-based approach hopefully by educating and building awareness with the goal of ultimately exploring what are some ways we can really practically fight, combat, come against, neutralize pedophilia. And you will learn pedophilic disorder or paraphilias. It's in the category of paraphilias. I'll explain all of that. It's one of the paraphilias, okay? Now, like I said, this issue is big. It is huge. And it is unavoidable. You can't run away from it. It's not going away. Okay? It's not going to go away just because you're upset. Catholic Church. Dominica of late. I'm from Dominica in the Caribbean. Not to be confused, people, with the Dominican Republic. We love them, but we're a different country. We're further south, okay? All day social media conversations on the radio. We've had in Dominica, although I live in Atlanta, you will learn this about Dominican people. Regardless of where we are on the planet, we're completely plugged into life in Dominica. So in Dominica, we've had at least 4 high-profile incidents that have brought the topic to the front of our consciousness. So even if we wanted to pretend it wasn't happening, it's just boom, like in your face, bam, 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 bam. First, word spread like wildfire over social media when copies of text messages between, let's say, a high-profile radio personality and a teenager were displayed. Like, it seems as if it's alleged, or it could be inferred from the text messages, from that conversation, if it's real and it wasn't doctored, it could be inferred that that text, that WhatsApp back and forth between the adult male and that teenage girl was about negotiating the amount of money the child would accept to allow the personality, the alleged person, to have a sexual encounter with her. So, boom, everybody knows who this person is, and it's like, oh my goodness. So, second incident. Then news broke again of a high-profile, popular musician who himself was alleged to have had an ongoing sexual engagement, encounters with a teenager. It might have even started before teenage. And I say alleged, I don't know the facts. Yeah, I believe, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, that person was charged, arrested, and let out on bail. So the situation is still in the legal system and has to be played out. Then number 3, a panel of adult men on one of the national radio stations, perhaps in attempting to explain what had transpired between the first scenario with the radio host. One adult was heard and seen, because it's live on social media, espousing the fact in their mind that it's at the ages of 13, 14, and 15. That's when women really look good. 13, 14, and 15. That's when, he said, they really look good. And he was saying it with such a feeling that it's, you could imagine perhaps mental pictures were even coming to his mind. This is me, right? Looking at the person's demeanor as they said it. 13, 14, and 15. that's when they really look good. And he was quickly supported by another gentleman on the same panel, a small panel on a small radio station, all men, a small panel, and two out of the small panel espousing similar views. Because this other gentleman spoke up and said, well, you know what? Actually, if said 13, 14, and 15-year-olds really love you, they won't sell you out. Now, for those of you not from Dominica or the Caribbean, sell you out is equivalent of snitching. So essentially what this adult male was saying was that if a 13-year-old loves you, or a 14-year-old loves you, or a 15-year-old loves you, I'm doing this because I'm not sure how love happens, with a 15, 14, 13-year-old. Then they won't snitch on you, as in they won't tell their caregiver, the person who's been raising them all of their lives. They won't tell the person who's been protecting them all their lives that you, an adult male who supposedly love them, is having sexual whatevers with them. As we speak right now, there's an ongoing search on the island for a young 12-year-old. She's 12, who was abducted from her house. Now, she was not in a jam session, as I've heard some people try to allude to the fact that teenagers who are out, say after hours, might be making themselves prey for predators. This child was in her home, getting ready to sleep, because apparently she had her nightgown on. Abducted from her home. And according to the police chief, by somebody in the community who is alleged to be suffering from mental illness, like who has a diagnosable condition and who's been agitated and acting out, externalizing his behaviors out in the community for the past 2 weeks. According to the police chief, this man used a machete, a cutlass, and hurt the adult man in the home and took the child. So the search is ongoing. I heard one of the rescuers, the searchers anyway, say, we're working with an intelligent madman. And another one said, it feels like Maria. So Hurricane Maria pummeled Dominica so bad, we were almost, one CNN reporter said it looked like a war zone. So this guy is saying to him, the feeling he has right now is a feeling similar to what he experienced after the onslaught of Maria. So what is pedophilia? What is pedophilia? Simply put, pedophilia is sexual feelings directed towards children. Sexual feelings directed towards children. Now, psychologists like me, we use something called the DSM. And Fiona, who's a therapist, we use the DSM, which is called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders. It's kind of like, this is what we go by. It's got all of the mental health disorders in there with all of the criteria, all of the categories, all of the things we have to look for to say, well, if you see this and you see that for this length of time, then you can call this group of symptoms this name. Okay? So pedophilia or pedophilia in the DSM, that's not all you need to be disordered. Okay? Pedophilic disorder is something different than pedophilia. See, because you can just have urges and that's it. And that's the end. That's the full stop. But the way a clinician will explain pedophilic disorder to you based on the DSM is that it's a psychosexual disorder, generally affecting adults, characterized by sexual interest in prepubescent children. Prepubescent means prior to puberty, or by attempts to engage in sexual acts with children before they reach puberty. Okay? So you have pedophilia, which is just the thoughts, the urges, the wanting to, but never acting on it. Pedophilic disorder, though, if one, it's recognized as one of the paraphilic disorders. I'll talk about that another time. That's the big class of abnormal, out of the ordinary sexual disorders. Okay? If only one or more, if one or more of these things are present, you can say someone can be diagnosed as having pedophilic disorder. Number one, they have interest or desires that produce in them a feeling of that affects their lives. And that's outside of the fact that society disapproves of it. So that means that that person in and of themselves, they don't feel good about it. They don't like that they have thoughts about engaging in sexual behavior or contact with children. Number two, if the behavior inherently involves harm to others, or it is directed at someone who is unwilling, or a person who is not able to give legal consent. What does that mean? If an adult who is espousing the view that it's when they are 13, 14, and 15, that's when they really look good to me sexually. If that person proceeds to act on it and finds a way to get that 13, 14, 15-year-old to say yes to sexual activity with them, that is diagnosable as a pedophilic disorder. Okay? In the case of pedophilia, although the interest itself is no longer considered symptomatic of mental illness, so just having the interest in prepubescent or post-puberty children who are not yet able to give legal consent, just having those thoughts and urges and wantings is not enough to be called a disorder, unless, again, it causes distress in the person, in the affected individual, or if they proceed to act on their thoughts, on their feelings, on their desires. Okay? So any attempt, what is it? Any attempt. I'll say it again, radio host. Any attempt at sexual contact with children is sufficient to warrant a diagnosis of pedophilic disorder. So your text messages, sir, would you consider that an attempt, people? The DSM-5 further stipulates that the interest, the wanting, the desire for, the leering, which is what my daughter called it after she went to Dominica for her 8th grade year, the leering, or the behavior in question must be present in that individual for at least 6 months for it to be diagnosable. And that individual must be at least 16 years of age or at least 5 years older than the child or children at the center of that individual's fantasies. Can I say that again? And you only need one of these criteria to be diagnosed as having a mental health disorder. It is not a joke. That individual must be at least 16 years old or at least 5 years older than the child or the children in question, who are at the center of that person's fantasies. So as I said, man, this is a huge topic. It's huge. There are many different categories, depending on the age of the child even. So generally speaking, pedophilia is used to refer to that sort of behavior and action perpetrated against children before they reach puberty. So prepubescent is the word we use. Pedophilia. You have another category that's called hebephilia, which is preference for children between the ages of 11 and 14. Generally speaking, by 11, many, if not most kids have already transitioned into puberty. And then you have ephebophilia, another big word, preference for late stage adolescence. So 15, 16. Yes, 15, 16. For those people who are saying that's a big woman. Yeah, there's a big pedophilia word for it. And sometimes it's used to go all the way up to the age of 19. For people who are primarily or exclusively, mainly, or exclusively sexually attracted to late pubescent adolescents, 15 to 19. Now, this is mental health, but then you have a criminal system, you have a legal system, right? That's separate from what a psychologist is looking at. In many countries, an individual who has been convicted in a court of law of child sexual abuse, say with a prepubescent, meaning before puberty, or post-pubescent child, after puberty, up to age 18, and some people say 19, that person will be called a sex offender, right? That's a different name. Some of those people, after a full diagnostic evaluation, psychiatric evaluation, psychological evaluation, might be later diagnosed as having a pedophilic disorder. Okay? All right, so that's a lot of meat. So I'm going to review like a good teacher. I see Gilda. Hi, Gilda. Gilda was one of my students in Dominica. A good teacher tries to review the main points. So the main points are this. An individual offender to be categorized as having a pedophilic disorder, you've got to be at least 16 years of age. Okay? Or at least 5 years older than the child that you're directing your sexual urges and actions towards. Pedophilia is generally referring to before puberty. Before the child has reached puberty, that's the one you like sexually, and you make moves to engage with sexually. Between 11 and 14, that's hebephilia. Same bucket. Okay? Just a little categorical difference. Then you have ephebophilia, 15, 16, some people say up to 19. The individual to be classified as having a disorder, you either have to, one, be feeling very upset in yourself that you even have these urges, or you have to have taken action to go from fantasy to really engaging in sexual activity with a minor. Now, there are some pedophiles who are only attracted to children, but there are some who are attracted to both children and adults. Some may be attracted to children of only one sex, boys only, or girls only. It is so important for parents to understand that your boys are also at risk. It's not just your girls. Now, sexual encounters between individuals with pedophilic disorder and children are frequently traumatic for who do you think? For the child. Especially if force or violence or threats not just against themselves, threats against their relatives, threats against their pets, financial threats, or violence is involved. I'm going to talk a little bit later about when there is no violence. And that's the one that is really, 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 really insidious. Because many people experiencing those urges use the argument that, well, hey, they said yes. But I'll show you how a kid can come to say yes. How any child, regardless of training, could come to say yes. So who are the biggest culprits? Pedophilic sexual offenders are usually family, friends of the family, or relatives of the victims. Most pedophiles are men, but there are women who are also pedophiles. And the type of activity may vary and might include just looking at children or looking at kids undressed or touching a child. But all of us know it might go further. And I don't have to describe every last sexual act for you to know what sexual acts are. And from the rootin' to the tootin', these people have no gates. There's nothing they won't do with children. Okay? Studies suggest that children who feel uncared for or who seem lonely or who are lonely may be at higher risk for sexual abuse. And you can guess many reasons for that. Many reasons potentially for that. Yeah, a child who is lonely might be more easily coerced, might be more easily drawn in, might not have people to stand up for or to teach them, might not have the support system. There are lots of reasons. So what causes pedophilia? What causes this thing? Is there a reason for it? Well, it's still unclear what the underlying reasons are for pedophilia. It's still unclear. And researchers and psychologists and legal people, and they're still trying to figure it out. However, pedophilic behavior has long been associated with sexual abuse or neglect experienced during childhood. So there's a high correlation. Recent studies have implicated certain changes in the brain structure and function that may be the result of developmental problems in utero, meaning when a woman gets pregnant, the little zygote, the little embryo forms and starts creating itself and doing its thing. And in that developmental process, certain wiring that has to take place doesn't take place, or it takes place but it's a little off. We see this in nature. There's so much variation in nature. Every plant is not the same, every brain is not the same, and so there are some studies that implicate different brain wiring, so to speak. Many people who abuse children are not necessarily suffering from pedophilia in the psychological sense of the word. Okay? Others use children as surrogates for adult relationships. Others use kids as a stand-in, as a surrogate. So instead of having adult relationships, if the adult relationships feel too complicated, too overwhelming, too emotionally too big for some people, it's easier for them, is that theory, to engage emotionally with children. Some people look at it as an impulse control disorder, meaning you have a thought, you don't have to act on it. And so, but there are some people who who do not control their urges. And so some people look at it in that category. Another possibility is poor social skills, like difficulty, again, maintaining relationships with their peers, with adults, with adult women, or with adult men. So they find it easier to engage children for their sexual gratification. So I want you to tell me what you think is the most powerful tool of a pedophile. What's the most powerful tool a pedophile uses? The word is grooming. The answer is called grooming. Now let's talk about that. Let's talk about what grooming is. And before we talk about grooming, I want to point out the biggest, perhaps it's unintentional, the biggest weapon of a pedophile, the biggest stick a pedophile uses to his, and I'm saying his just because the research is showing men are significantly in higher numbers more likely to be pedophiles than women. Understand that women also do it. Okay? But the biggest, and I say perhaps it's unintentional, weapon of a pedophile is a culture of silence. It's if people like me and you who know don't speak up. And if people like you and me, when kids speak up, we try to tell them, are you sure? Maybe that didn't happen. Are you sure? You're too fast. You're a fast girl. You were in the jam session too late. And so we stifle them because it's perhaps causing too much anxiety in us to discuss it or to face it. And this is where the community, I think, has to take accountability. Facebook, somebody saying, which is what Dominica is known for, a stiff upper lip. Shh. Shh. Don't tell anybody I told you, nah? I have a secret to tell you. Let me tell you a secret. Shh. But don't tell anybody I say, That I hear we. But don't put my name in business, In a country like Dominica, as beautiful and as lovely and as kind as we are very consumed with appearances. We're very consumed with what will they say about you if you say that about them. Even if you're right, even if it's true. The thing is, that is what the pedophile is banking on. The pedophile is banking on families who won't speak and who won't take the next step to address the matter in a legal, which is only right, which is only fair. It is the thing to do. If something illegal happens, the next step is to take it to and through the legal system. But if the family, say this 13-year-old comes to the mother and says, this is what happened, this person did such and such to me. If this person is perhaps not strong enough or does not have a nice support system, this person is perhaps vulnerable to this auntie, this cousin, this brother, this one saying, oh, you're going to make the family look bad. Leave it for God. Leave it for the Lord, they say. Let God deal with it. Vengeance is mine, says the Lord. Meanwhile, the child continues to endure and suffer. And who gets away? The pedophile. Absolutely, Facebook user. That child perhaps even gets a whooping because somehow the denial does this 360 exorcist move where somehow that child must have done something to make them want to do that to you. It's called blaming the victim. And that comes up, it's a defense mechanism that's almost automatic in so many people. Almost automatic. Where the first thought, again, because we are a culture in Dominica where the elders, oh my goodness, the elders are, their word is life. So particularly if this person is older than you, if this is a stepfather, if this is a father, if this is a big brother, a big uncle, usually the child has to make a strong case against this adult. The other problem I see culturally is the idea of the one with the biggest mouth and the loudest voice seems to be the right voice. So if I can scream loudly and say, I would never do that. No, I did not. She's lying, and I'm loud enough and my mouth is big enough, the group is likely to follow what I said. If I say it loudly enough and I say it like I mean it, this little child gets told, what did you do? Stop whatever it is. And we've had many children continue to endure stress and victimization from adults because of that way. So that culture of silence, that not wanting to make waves because we have to see them in church on Sunday, or we don't want people to talk bad about our family because If you say your big brother did it to you, that means your big brother's got to go to face the legal system. And oh my God, it would be too shameful. So that's how the community colludes with pedophiles. Colludes mean we go into complot with the pedophile. We don't think we're doing it, but we are. We go into an agreement. It's an unspoken agreement with the pedophile. When the focus becomes the minor as opposed to the offending behavior of the adult. All of you have seen the posts on social media. If it wasn't the parents' fault, it was the child's fault. If it wasn't the child's fault, it was the fact that they know how to negotiate now with big man. If it wasn't the clothes they wear, it was the fact that they're out in the jam. They like to see whoa. It is not the child's fault. As you see here, it is a disorder if the human being is not able to give legal consent. So I don't care si ti fila toutouni devant. It doesn't matter si toutouni I vini du bout devant, vey tire tout hard li vey di ou mi moi la. Point mwen. You are out of order as the adult because this person who said yes to you, for whatever reason, the reason doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the reason is. You are out of order because that person cannot give legal consent. So what is grooming? So we talked about how, yes, there are threats and there's violence. And like for that little girl today who is abducted, who God knows what her mental state is right now. God knows what's going on right now or what has happened to her right now. For her, there was no conversation. For her, there was violence. For her, there was just violence. But for many kids, for many young people, there's no violence. There is grooming. There's grooming. Okay. What is grooming? Grooming is an art. Grooming is an art of the trade of a pedophile. It is a process of manipulation. And when you say it as a definition in big words, it's kind of hard to put it into real life. But we'll talk about it in real life because I'm going to share my story with you and you'll understand what grooming looks like. Grooming is a process of manipulation and trust building that a perpetrator uses to create the atmosphere they need to exploit a child, to get a child to say yes. So you see how I did that there? I said to exploit a child. But essentially what that means is to get a child to say yes. Typically, that adult will seem like a loving and attentive and friendly and nice man, a nice adult in the child's life. I want you to know something, those of you who think my kid is beyond this. I'll tell you what the research shows. The psychological research shows that no one is immune. No one is immune. No child is immune. But some are more susceptible than others, particularly minors, because of their innocence. because of their naivete, because they haven't lived long enough on the planet to know that a person could possibly have that in their mind for them. And grooming can occur at any age. At any age. And it is very, let's say, it is easier to do in cultures like Dominica. Let's say that. Because culturally, we're raised to be very nice, especially the girls. Don't be rude. It's a big deal not to be rude. Again, respect your elders, which is great. It's great. But there's a flip side to it. There's a flip side to it. See, as adults and parents, it's great to teach our kids this lovely morals, do the right thing. Even our religion is big on doing good for other people. We're great at that. But we have to give the balance, which is you can do good for other people, but you cannot hurt yourself doing good for other people. If you have to hurt yourself to do good for somebody else, that means that's a no. This is the piece we have to teach our kids more. Yes, be respectful, but you have to understand and teach and train the child what is the non-negotiable, what is the line that cannot be crossed, and how they are to deal with it. Be nice to Uncle so-and-so. Be nice to Mr. so-and-so. And the child, you can see the child backing away. But, behave, why you not hugging your uncle? Your uncle wants you to sit on his lap. Why you don't want him to make you, come there, girl, come. Yeah, we're known for that. It's time to do it in a different way. I'm going to talk about stages of grooming because this stuff, because it's not violence, which is like, boom, like this guy did, and just Tuesday evening just comes into a person's home with his cutlass and hurts the man of the house and grabs the child. Because a lot of this, as in the example of the radio host and the teenage girl, where they were bartering, back and forth they went on the text. Oh, this is not enough? Well, I mean, the guy was actually, from what I read, it looked as if he was, when you're at the market and you're haggling, he was haggling with a teenager for her body. I used to help my mother at the Portsmouth market to sell limes, to sell mangoes, to sell coconuts, to sell bananas. And the people would walk up and they would come and they'd see our lovely limes. We had spent our whole Friday picking our limes, been pricked, sweat, worked hard for our limes. And they'd come and they'd say, can you give it to me for, that's a little too expensive. They'd haggle, they'd try to break us down, is what my mother called it. Try to break you down to get a lower price. He was trying to break the little girl down for a lower price for her body. That's what the text message reflected. And he was doing it with whininess too. Like, why are you trying to do this to me? Why are you trying to hurt me? Like, you want me to pay more? What's going on? Okay. An adult male. But this is a process. It's process. Yeah? The grooming experience is a process. It's not a one-time thing. So what does the pedophile do? They identify their victim. They target their victim. Any child, any teenager is a potential victim. But again, those kids who seem a little more quiet, a little less talkative, a little bit more to themselves, or maybe they don't seem like they have many people around them looking after them. Again, though, every child is a potential victim. The next step is to gain trust and to gain access to the child, to gain the child's trust or the teenager's trust, and to gain access, a way to get to them, a way to get close to them. And then to begin somehow to be playing a role in that child's life. That's a big one. I'm a tutor now. I'm your advisor. No, I'm your mentor. Oh, I can teach you how to do these things. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, you're so smart. You're so beautiful. Long time I watching you, eh? So that means from the pedophilia description and definition, long time I watching you means it's been a long time since I've had these mental urges of you, this prepubescent or post-pubescent child. It's been a long time I've been fantasizing about you. And then what the pedophile will do is to isolate that child. Find a when or a how to get that child, that teenager, alone. If they're able to get you to even cooperate with them and say yes, then now there's secrecy about the relationship. Don't tell anybody. Shh. As the guy said on the radio, if they love you enough, they won't sell you out. That's what this is about. If they are properly groomed, is what he was saying, they will keep it a secret. And then there's the initiation of sexual contact, moving now to controlling the relationship. Because there you have this teenager who has no clue about navigating a relationship, much less for with an adult male. Much less for with an adult male. So if you're a teenager and you're listening to me, or you hear this, pay attention to any adult male or anybody who is 16 years or older, or who is at least 5 years older than you, who is sending you lots of messages, who's asking you to keep your conversations with them secret, who's trying to find out more and more and more about you, and who starts sending you sexual messages, and even gets you to share personal information. Or they might even go as far as trying to blackmail you. They might even go as far as trying to blackmail you. So as we sit tonight with heavy hearts, waiting for the cops, waiting for the people who are searching for this little girl, a lot of people are wondering, where is the legal system stand in Dominica? You know, where is the legal system? A lot of people complain that the cops don't always follow through, that once there is a report, the judicial system can fail the kids often. Does Dominica even have a standard or a statute on grooming? Well, I'm grateful to a Facebook user who posted section 22A of the current Sexual Offenses Act in Dominica. Section 22A, it describes grooming as this in Dominica. So for the people on the radio station who are wondering about whether or not she's going to sell you out, or those people who are engaging right now in WhatsApp back and forth with children, this is the grooming statute in Dominica. Yes, there is one. An adult person is guilty of an offense: A, having met or communicated with a minor under 16 years of age on at least 2 earlier occasions. He or she, 1, intentionally meets the minor, or 2, travels, takes their bicycle, walks with the intention of meeting the minor in any part of the world. So that means, sir, you could be living in New York and you start grooming her on Facebook and you come down for a weekend in Dominica. At the time of the meeting or at the time of the travel, he or she, perpetrator, pedophile, intends to do anything to or in respect of the child during or after that meeting in any part of the world, which, if the act were done in Dominica, would amount to the commission by a person of a sexual offense. You will be committing a sexual if she is 16 years or younger. Okay? You would be committing an offense, Mr. 13, 14, and 15. That's when they're looking good. You would be committing an offense if you got on your bicycle and rode over to her house. An adult is also guilty of an offense if he or she causes another person to carry out the offense specified in subsection 1. So if you get somebody else to do it, you're guilty too. And you are liable, upon conviction, of course, to imprisonment for a term of 14 years. A term of 14 years. Okay? Important to note, having communicated with the minor by any means, letter, homing pigeon, Facebook, DM, WhatsApp, text, by any means. I think we've got a lot of work to do on the island if we're talking solutions. If we're talking solutions, we have a lot of work to do. I say, number 1, start with public service announcement campaigns on the radio, on the television, on social media. Why? Because there's a part of me that wants to believe that these gentlemen maybe they didn't know. The ones who were talking this stuff about 13, 14, 15, maybe they didn't know. I say use the airwaves and the media to start a public service campaign where you raise awareness and you educate people. So instead of radio hosts openly fantasizing about 13, 14, and 15-year-olds, I say we need some serious education on that topic, as uncomfortable as it might feel to talk about it. As weird as you might feel, it's got to be done. Number 2, we got a lot of strong men in Dominica who are very smart, very sharp. We don't say it much, but we still look up to the men of the culture and of the society to lead. We don't say it much in words. We don't do it like that. So I say, men, you might have been abdicating your duties. For so many men to be walking around with this way of thinking, the stronger men of the society have to be checking all the men. You gotta check the men. Yeah, we surrender a lot of our power to you, I think. Unless, my position is, I'm not personally doing that, but I think a lot of women in Dominica surrender their power to the men of the society, which works for many people. I'm not judging it, but if you have that much power, you also have the responsibility of protecting and providing and keeping the children and the women safe. Men still bristle when women tell them what to do. Many men do. Many men do. And so the women in your society might say, we don't like this, we don't like that, stop doing this, stop doing that. But I think men listen to other men in a different way. And you don't have to agree with me if you don't want to, but I think it's the truth. Especially in Dominica. So I'm going to invite and encourage the men to step up and check each other. When I was growing up in my little village, a man had the audacity to beat a woman, which was just not done in our village. It just wasn't done. You know what the other villagers, the men did? They gave him a taste of his own medicine. He never did it again. He never did it again. In my little village of Cottage, and I'm so proud of my village because there's certain things there's certain things that just would not be done in Cottage, okay? Like we'd hear about it happening in other villages and we would just be like, huh? Nuh-uh. There was a certain level of, I think, respect of each other that happened in that village growing up. Yeah, he had the gumption to beat this lady. They lived together, had kids together. And the other men in the village let him taste what he had dished out. They were not related to her. They were not closely related to her. They weren't even her brothers. And he never did it again. Somebody said, whoop him with a kangwate. Yes, Langbef. Get the kangwate avec bayon volé. Il pas jamais fait encore. Il pas jamais fait encore. I have a feeling if it was 5 women who went to that door, to that house, they would not have been able to be so successful at getting him to change his behavior. So men you have to check yourselves. You have to check each other. I think we lost something. That's my number 3 when it comes to solutions. I think we lost something when we stopped teaching civics in elementary school. I remember the little book. We had all these little things about rules and society and looking out for each other and doing this and doing that. It helped to form our consciences. It helped to give us kind of like an internal, like a barometer. Let me stay. We learned ethics as kids in my primary school. We learned how to be with other people in my primary school. And that was every Friday, at least once a week, we had our civics class. Number 4, community support. When I say community support, I'm like, if you see something, say something. Don't just like have a secret. But don't say I said. Because my child is your child, and your child on the street is my child. I know as kids, we hated it. My generation, we hated our parents talking about us to each other, telling them good or bad that they saw. But it helped to keep people in line. You had watchers. We could call them medveillé if we want, but there's a positive for the medveillé. But the medveillé, you got to do your job with a higher intention of caring for, protecting, versus just medveillé, eve ou kani pale, you know, se ani bef ou ka pale eve medveillé la. Medveillé bon. Medveillé is good. Medveillé is a good thing. Ouvezio, you have to see, you know, because many parents are working and they're busy. Some of them are single parents and they got to manage, you know, a household. They got to keep a full-time job. You see the kid on the bus stop and you see this older male trying to bring their attention to this child. You, as the adult who doesn't know this child, but you know it's out of order, check the adult. Check the adult. Check the adult. You, the teacher in the high school, do you know how many teachers got away with this mess in high school? Who might still be getting away with this mess where they would groom at least one or two every year and lead the child, prepubescent or just post-pubescent, as the young man on the radio said, 13, 14, 15. What is that? 13, 14, 15, that's third form, fourth form, fifth form. Teachers, male teachers would groom. Oh, let me help you with your homework. Suddenly you get in A's. 90% on Koshoni. Community has to step in. So other teachers who see this out of ordinary, inappropriate behaviors must speak up. The peers must check the peers. And those above the peer system must check them. Because they're not going to listen to the kids and the students. It's a way to hold each other accountable. Again, because parents cannot be everywhere. Don't worry, I'm coming to the parents though. I'm coming to the parents because that's where it's at. Ultimately, that's where it's at. Number 5, the legal system. The legal system must follow through with the letter of the law. We've got statutes. We have a legal system. We have great laws. Okay? But they must be enforced. They must be enforced. Follow through with the letter of the law. The little money somebody giving you to bury a case. How are you going to sleep at night? And I know that's happened. I know that's happened. I know that's happened. And perhaps it's time for, again, every boss has a boss, you know, and every boss has a boss and a boss and a boss. So if you're feeling trapped in the legal system, like I'm not getting the satisfaction I need on behalf of my child, the case has gone nowhere, I say it's time to start investigating, well, what's the next move? And sometimes you might not have the money, but if you have a voice, you might be able to get some other people to support you. I think the mental health systems are integral to managing and treating pedophilia. This man who kidnapped the little girl, I hear this boy's been on the streets for the past 2 weeks and they've called in. I mean, I saw a post of a gentleman who would They'd called in to the cops. Hey, this guy is out of control. He could hurt somebody. Based on what we're seeing, he is out of control. That, though, sometimes is a bit of a dicey thing, because you have to still respect the individual rights of a person. So unless they make an actual threat, you can't necessarily arrest them. Unless they really hurt somebody, you can't really arrest them. But I think once they do, like now he's abducted and kidnapped a child, and he's hurt a man, almost killed the man. So there must be balance. There must be retribution. There must be a balancing of the scales. So I'm going to say no. So for families, this is where it is for families, parents and families. There's no avoiding the fact that the culture everywhere, there's no escape. It's saturated by sex. There's sex on the phones. Look, you give your kid the phone so you can keep track of them at school. What happens? They go online looking for a little research, a little homework. They end up, God knows where, seeing God knows what. So it is not avoidable. There's no way to get around it. Parents must start earlier to talk to their kids, to engage their kids early and often, like really making time. Even if you're not comfortable, even if you're feeling bad, to talk about sex and to talk about these real issues, like the fact that an adult male, an adult woman might try to bribe you, might try to get you to believe they love you so they can get access to your body. And this is what you do. The first time it happens, you come home, you talk to me about it, because this is my job. I'm here to protect you. You do not have to deal with this alone. And these are some of the things they might say to you to get you to be to believe that you ought to be afraid, or that you need to be entertained or seduced by their words. So parents, men, fathers, you've got to teach your kids in the home of what's out there. It's not enough. It's not good enough. It's almost wicked. It's almost wicked for parents to teach their kids to be nice. Nice, be respectful. But to not teach them the other side of how to protect themselves when they go out there. You must balance it, or else you leave your child like just a duck or a crab in a barrel, and somebody can just do whatever they want with the child. You have to balance it. Yes, that might mean that they lose their innocence early, but there's no avoiding it. These days, there's no avoiding it. You think they're not on there doing and watching weird stuff. Think again. So this generation of children needs for their parents, especially since many people don't even like you teaching sex education in school and talking about these things in school. Well, you teach your children. Be open, be honest, try to be non-judging. It's not about you. It's about keeping them safe. Because no group, no entity, no anything is as powerful as you, parent. Nothing. They're with you day in, day out. They're yours. It's your responsibility. Yes, teach them to be respectful to adults, but teach them to honor their feelings when they tell you, I don't feel comfortable around this man. I don't want to kiss my uncle. I don't want to sit on my stepdaddy's lap. They have a right. And so this thing we do in Dominica, where we stifle the voices of children, very often we do it in the name of respect and being nice. It's got to be balanced, where you teach a child how to trust themselves, how to trust their own intuition and to trust their feelings. So that even if that guy who steps up to the child and says, hey, long time I've been looking at you, she knows right off the bat, this cannot be good for me based on what my parents said. So by the time many of us parents understand that, hey, I need to be talking to my kids about sex, it might be too late. Because sexualizing behaviors are everywhere. Everywhere. In their little TV shows, their little cartoons. It starts early. So we got to teach kids to have their sting. Be nice like a honeybee, but you got to be able to sting, right? Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee when you need to, when you're out there on your own, on your way from school, standing at the bus stop, going down to the store to do your whatever, get groceries. Teach them how to defend themselves the first time. I think too in Dominica, we take too many things for a joke. Like it's a defense mechanism. It's a coping mechanism. But the most serious of subjects, we can find humor in it. That's a positive. But the other side is everything is not a joke. And so the person who can turn a nasty situation like this into a joke, or who's loud and boisterous and ho, 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 that doesn't mean that they're right. That doesn't mean that they're right. So I'm going to end tonight by sharing with you my story, so you see how grooming works in real life. Like in real life, what does it look like? You hear people use the word a lot. What does grooming look like? So here's the story. I was 6 years old, 6. And he was a friend of the family. How did I know he was a friend? He was my parents' friend. And every day he'd walk past the house and he'd call me Juanita. Juanita is my grandmother's name on my dad's side. And I was like, what? I felt so special. He would call me Juanita, my grandma's name, every day. And I started feeling so special. I was 6. I remember the feeling sometimes when I'm thinking about it. And one Sunday afternoon, he came to help the family. Dominica, we do kudme. Kudme is where the whole village turns out to help if one family is having something that they need to do. So we were moving a little house. Back then they moved the little houses on logs, and and ropes, and all the men came. And they finally placed the house. Ooh, I was excited. I found a few little stones and darted into the house and started playing my little jacks. I was so excited. Me and my jacks and my imagination. And while I was there, it started raining. So I was like, oh, okay. And then before I knew it, the door opened and he jumped into the little house. Clearly, he'd been watching me. Clearly, he'd been stalking me like prey. Clearly, like a cat, he got into the house. Of course, I didn't scream. Why would I scream? He's my friend. He calls me Juanita. He calls me my granny's name. And then again, before I knew it, I remember the darkness of the building, the little house. He put his hand over my mouth. Why would my friend put his hand over my mouth? So the 6-year-old is confused, wondering what's happening. But you have no frame of reference, so I was just confused. Thankfully, the story could have ended in many other ways. Thankfully, my sister came calling for me. because my mother had a special antenna. She had a special antenna. Sent my older sister to look for me, to go find me. And when he heard my sister's voice, he busted out of the back door, tumbled down the hill, tumbled down towards the ravine. Of course, it was hard, very hard to hide himself. Days later, although he stayed cooped up for a few days, days later, he's out with face full of scratches from the bushes. And my mom, being my mom, she did the right thing, got the legal system involved. I'm happy at least I got a chance to speak up. I see myself now standing in the Portsmouth police station. Great investigator. Did a wonderful job preparing me for that event. But nothing came off the case. Nothing came off the case. I have no idea what happened. So when people talk about the judicial system, I have no idea, because there was never any resolution. But at the very least, I felt protected and supported by my family, who did what you do if something illegal happens. You take it to the right forum. You believe your child. You listen to your child, as opposed to find ways to, because you're feeling ashamed or guilty or afraid or anxious, finding ways to somehow blame the child. What if I had parents who blamed me? What if I had parents who had blamed me? I might have become a totally different person. Because that's what happens to many victims. Your identity changes. Who you used to be is somebody different now. Okay? So, I think there are many, many ways to address this issue. There are medical ways to address this issue. There's medication. There are things like chemical castration for repeat offenders. There's CBT, which is cognitive behavior therapy. Many therapists do not enjoy working with pedophiles and sexual abusers of children. I mean, even in the prisons, they will beat a person down, They'll beat them down if that's what they came in for. But I think on Dominica, it's time for a reckoning. There's no avoiding the issue. It's time for a reckoning. And I don't want people to stop talking about it, because some child out there needs you to keep talking about it. Many children out there need you to keep talking about it. I need you to let them know in no uncertain terms that they don't have to suffer through this. Because you, older adult, while you're glorying in your 13, 14, 15-year-old scenario, you leave the wreckage behind emotionally. You leave the wreckage behind. This is sociopathic behavior to direct your sexual urges towards 13, 14, 15-year-olds just because you have decided they look good. It's not correct. It is not correct. I think we collectively change our minds about a thing. We raise our thoughts. We raise the way we're thinking. We entertain purer, higher level thoughts. Yes, Dillian, sick men. It is a mental health disorder, and it is also a crime. To answer the question, is pedophilia in and of itself Just having the thoughts, just having the urges, a crime? No. It takes you to act on it. Is it a mental disorder? No, not in and of itself. It takes you being 16 years or older, or at least 5 years older than a prepubescent child, before puberty, or up to 19 even. In Dominica, you might be able to get away with the 16-year-old business. Somewhere else, you'll spend your 14 years in jail. So if the issue is you're having difficulty identifying adult women you can engage with, I say there are communication skills. There are lots of videos these days on, I don't know, I think Dominican men are great at conversation. I don't know if that changed. But the fact that you're looking towards and you're targeting, I just was very struck by the fact that on one small panel of about 4 or 5 people, on one small panel, on a small radio station, at least 2 were making such profound statements about teenagers. Well, it is, if you take it to the action, it is diagnosable. Yes, you're suffering from pedophilic disorder. And yes, according to your statutes on the island, it is criminal behavior. Even if your manner of communication was just texting and you didn't see them. So I encourage the women on the island, and the mothers and the fathers and the men and the children. If you want to see change, you're going to have to speak up a little louder about it. You're going to have to speak up and act up a little louder about it. You're going to have to do like the men in my village did to that man who dared to put his hand on that woman. Mwen kale pale pa toi présent parce que mwen pa vle Facebook mette mwen l'anjol, mais moun la ki di kot moso kan gwate la fanchou yo. Fanchou se bo la. Fanchou yo. Les otan yo ka try pou envio les enfants so. I am finished with the professional piece of the presentation right now. I'm finished with the professional piece of the presentation. Mais si on bou di, Yves Levini, ki on les enfants, find out ça, fanchouille, mawe, bod la mer, fanchouille, yonde toi, tape fwe ou tape tonton timoun, buy gas. Okay? This is out of order, and there is not leaving the airwaves. It's one after another, because it's time to deal with it. The teachers who do this to kids, the religious people who do this to kids, the relatives who do this to kids, the people on the street who you don't even know from Adam. Fanchouyo. C'est le. Oui, fan bonda yo. Assez. Il y a assez femmes, grand femme Dominique. Il y a assez, grand femme, belle femme Dominique. Hein? Il y a assez, grand femme Dominique, belti femme. Belti vijas, belti bonda. Pour là où on 13, 14, 15-year-old, who ka di, se a présent yo ka gade bon, garçon, ou bouzon volé. Dillian, I am with you. Dillian, I am with you. I am with you. Okay? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So if this is not a thing, all the Christian, tout ça fait Christian, poquit la, Oui, nous aimons bon Dieu, nous dis, nous dat, nous bon. It's the word of God says, I'm doing to others as you'd have them do unto you. Kon sa, si ou pa vle moun dérespect tes enfants, pou chi koz ou ka dérespect tes enfants dot moun. Eve se gwan nom tête fait la mon voilà là. Zon se gwan nom. Kon sa, zon pa ni enfants. Eve pou chi koz, ici zon pa ni enfants, kouman fait zon pa ni enfants? Parce que si ou ni enfants ou pa ka chen non qualité leader comme ça, hein. Si ou ni enfants, eve ou ni yon che, ou pa ka fait bagay kon sa. It is sociopathic behavior. It's a mental health disorder and it's also criminal behavior. And it's time for the community at large to say, nou pa ka fè sa encore parce que nou kale moutwe zafan nou kouman pouye evezo à la oui, à la caille, à l'église, en l'école, tout partout. This problem of sexual perversion is more serious and far-reaching than we admit. It is more serious. I am totally in agreement with you. Do we realize that not even parents? This is a statement here by this Facebook user. The problem of sexual perversion is more serious and far-reaching than we admit. Do we realize that not even parents, biological and other, can be trusted? Not even the people who nature put in place to keep you safe can kids trust nowadays. Why? And it's not as if this is a new problem, but it seems to be that this should have been a problem that there should be less of it now, as opposed to what seems to be more of it now. Legislation cannot fix it. This is an issue of the heart. It's a moral issue. It's an ethical issue. Yes, it is. It's a rebellion against nature. It's a rebellion against God, whoever you call your God. It's a rebellion against universal law. It is out of order. And good parents, wise parents, are going to have to do a little more than just teaching your kids to be nice and respectful. Nice and respectful. Nice and respectful, pa ase. Fan chuyo. Fan bondayo, like Dillian says. This is gone, the train has gone off the rails with this. I cannot believe, I couldn't believe it. Okay, you used to hear one little thing, two little things, this little thing, da 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 da. But ça y est, COVID pointed moun man. C'est comme si de nou vini kon bête. You know, it's out of order. Petra says to take action. You've got to take action. The talk is not enough. You have to go beyond talk and take action. The schools. A lot. Okay, so in most jurisdictions, teachers are called mandated reporters. Mandated reporters. So the fact that in some schools, where teachers grooming young girls, that's just so egregious and out of order. Because at least one other teacher needs to be seeing this, and you have to make a report somewhere. You have to make a report. You have to address the issue. You have to address the issue. And it's not going away. The fact that it's in our faces like this, an opportunity to grow and to do better, to make a change. Like it feels like people have become very like selfish. It's all about me. It's all about what I need, what I want. You know, and sometimes we start off with a want, and a want soon becomes a need, because c'est gwan homme là, montan ka pale kont zanfan 13, 14, 15 là. It starts up here as mental thoughts and fantasies. But then you go into action and totally interfere with somebody's purpose on the planet. This is not cool at all. It is really horrendous. Yeah, girls have to be encouraged to speak up. I'm not sure. I have a feeling that they, I mean, I'm thinking about myself in my generation. I think we learn to speak up, but I think the parents and the adults have to do a better job of listening as well. A better job listening. Okay? A better job listening. We sing, I believe the children are our future. Well, we got to do a better job protecting this and preserving this future of ours. Yeah, I'm taking your comments now. Yes, Dillian says that's enough. They don't have a heart. They do not have a heart. I mean, I'm telling you, there's a certain level of freedom. And I have to say, perhaps he just didn't know. I want to give him some grace to say perhaps he didn't know, but how can you feel so free over public airways saying a thing like that? It's like, what is going on? What is going on? It is dysregulated and out of order, and it must be addressed. If you have a child who's acting up, you've got to apply consequences to the child, don't you? Yeah. So this behavior is way out of order, and it's got to be addressed. Pe moun yo besoin on volé. And it's not the child. Pe moun besoin on volé. Avec quoi moun dit avec kangwate. Yeah, Dominica is known for a tight upper lip and a lot of secrecy. The secrecy is not good. It's not good for the kids at all. We are failing them when we keep these things a secret and when we think, oh, but I don't want to make the person mad. Like just deal with that instead of the potential destruction of this child's personality and their life. Something happens to the brain. I'll talk about this. I'm going to do a couple more on this topic and address different issues. But the brain of a child that gets, let me say it in Creole. Le ou introduce un ti fi pou bagay kon sa, to jen, ou ka turn on chemicals at a brain ti fi, dopamine receptors, ki ka fe ti fi la fast. That's the word we say, we call them. It's a brain response. It's not as if they just woke up one day and decided they're going to be fast. Very often it's connected to this sort of stuff. And I'll talk about it a different time. I'm just, there's a part of me that feels exhausted and overwhelmed with the topic. And I understand why many people don't want to talk about it. It's a lot. It's heavy. And again, many, if not most girls, women right here on this live, you've had at least one experience in your life where you felt this kind of discomfort on some level. It's not good. It doesn't feel good for us. Men, it doesn't feel good for us. Fellas who are on the radio, it doesn't feel good for us. It doesn't feel good for the 13, 14, 15-year-old once they get over the high, the dopamine high of your attention. And that falls away and reality sets in. It doesn't feel good for them. You're not doing them a favor. It's not a blessing. Your attention is not a blessing to them. Dillian, you say it's because they already know there's no repercussions, especially if they've already done it. Well, who sou pa vle tan ou ke senti, who doesn't hear must feel. So hi Elvin, you say we need you in Dominica. You're the best. Well done. Job well done. Thank you, Elvin. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I'm trying my best to be in Dominica while I'm out of Dominica. You know, they say, no matter where I am, my heart is in Dominica. That's the truth for me. And we've got to do better. Okay? Yeah, chances are they have already gotten away with it. That's why they speak with such boldness on it and laughter and like disrespect. So I'm encouraging the community to stand with the kids, stand with the parents of those kids. A lot of those parents feel overwhelmed by threats, by coercion, by money, by gifts, by all sorts of things. But when you hurt the spirit of a human being, no amount of money, no amount of words can make up for this, you know? And sometimes we change the trajectory of many young children's lives with this kind of action. Men, that's what happens. You walked off and you were feeling good. You had some pleasure and some fun, but their life gets messed up 10, 15 years down the road. I wonder how many kids have had to, avorter, abort babies based on these situations. And you don't think about the consequences. So this is a very lascivious sort of mindset. It's it's very dark. If it's so dark that you're not thinking about the other person and the consequences for that other person, and you're only thinking about your pleasure, what feels good for you, that's very dark. And again, it's a significant problem because you would expect maybe 5% of the population, to have pedophilic urges. But like I said, on a small panel, on a small radio station, with less than 5 men in the room, I have 2 of these men talking boldly about this stuff. This is a significant problem. And so the social welfare systems have to do more about public service announcement campaigns, blasting it in the ears, raising awareness, sensitizing people to the importance of this issue. It cannot be, oh, I don't know what to do, or they, or the parents, or no. You got to start somewhere. And a good place to start is a public service campaign. A good place to start. Use the airwaves as an antidote for this poison that went out. Use the airwaves, whoever the owner of the radio station is, start a public service campaign to educate the community on what's right and what's not right, what is righteous and what is not righteous, and use the statutes of the country to do it. Use that as your guideline. So I can imagine if I were the owner, say, of the radio station, I would be feeling really uncomfortable right now and be confused because, you have your people that you hire. They're good at their job. You want to keep them. Yes, you want your radio station to continue, but something gross happened there. So you've got to make amends. You've got to balance it out. You've got to bring a correction. You can't just become defensive, which might be a natural instinct to want to do, to be like, oh, let me go to defend my people or whatever. No, just face the truth of it. This thing happened and present an antidote to neutralize the energy of the nastiness that went off over the airwaves, because all of that is sound vibration. You must understand how powerful that is. Okay? You stand up, you take accountability. I apologize. You're right. I apologize on behalf of. I'm going to have a class. I'm going to have them do a 2-hour training, a 3-hour training with the therapists or with the social welfare system or something. Because I swear, I thought clearly this man cannot be a smart man to be talking like this. You know what I mean? Like there's no wisdom in what I was hearing. Like, what is going on? And for this person to have a microphone that the whole country hears, knock it off. And the women and the girls of Dominica, we've had it with y'all. We're not doing this. We're not doing it with y'all anymore. No mas. No mas. Mon deja di se ti fia chen fonzo eve clickety clack yosa. Continue and fay your hunt, because if you don't want to listen, if you don't want to hear, you will feel. Fay your hunt. I don't care who it is, because out of order is out of order. Out of order is out of order. Okay? Anyway, this is my offering for tonight. Thank you all for tuning in. Share the live, because I think a lot of people, including some of those people on that panel, didn't realize that they, based on their description, they're close to the diagnostic criteria for pedophilic disorder. And based on that statute, look, that text message, this guy is barking up that tree of committing an offense that's worth 14 years. So, yeah, we can do better. We got to do better. And I'm saying, I, for one, I'm doing my part. Okay? All right, y'all. Have a happy rest of your Thursday. Peace. Remember, try your best. Learn, read, listen to inspiring things and things that teach you how to think better so you can feel better and do better in your life for yourself and for your families. All right? Peace.